All right. Hi, Kamal. Hi, Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Sunday, February 10th, here at Vonvo.com. It's a pleasure to have both of you. I just wanted to go over two real quick important rules here at Vonvo. First, I just want to make you aware right now that I'm recording this conversation, and after the recording is complete, I will be uploading this discussion to YouTube to our channel. Is that okay with both of you?
Sure.
Okay, great. And then from there, uh, here at Vonvo, we're all about having valuable conversations. So we ask our speakers to stay both respectful, civil, and there not be any personal attacks against one another or any other people who were to join in on this room. Is that fine with both of you?
Sure.
Okay, great. So let's begin the discussion, and we will get going. So we're here to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We're going to have a focus on solutions, which is great. But just for any of our viewers who come in and start watching, or who were to see this video on YouTube, Kamal, can you give a quick background of yourself? Who you are, where you're from, and how maybe you got so passionate about this issue. And then Jeremy, you can go next.
Okay. Well, I'm a lawyer in Washington, D.C. I'm a Palestinian from Jerusalem. We lived there and until 1979. We moved to New Orleans, and now I'm a lawyer here. And like many Palestinians who immigrate at one point or another, we're not allowed to go back. That's the history that influences why I am passionate about this. Now, obviously, I'm assuming, like any Jew or any Palestinian who grows up in the 20th and 20th and the 21st century, you pretty much have to live in a bubble to not be seriously influenced by the Arab-Israeli conflict. I mean, these are passionate issues, and so, like everyone else, everyone thinks they have a solution for it, and I'm one of those. So through the years, I considered many things, and one thing I realized, and I'm sorry, and last year was the culmination of many years of effort in which I went to Israel, Palestine, and I did several conferences, but one of the most notable ones is that to the Ariel settlement, and I took a bus full of Palestinians. We went to the Ariel settlements and we did a conference. And here's what I see. I mean, I think the two-state solution, or the idea of creating separate countries for these people, just wishful thinking. I just don't think it will work for various reasons. One thing I realized through my extensive travel through Israel, Palestine, is that for many Israelis, many Jews, Israel is not the land that became Israel in 1948. For many of them, Israel is bigger than that. It includes the West Bank and Gaza. They call it Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. They have they believe they have religious, historic, and emotional ties to every square inch of that land, which explains why settlers are willing to go into hostile territory to live in these areas because they have such strong feelings. Now, on the other hand, Palestinians actually have the same exact feelings. To them, Palestine is not the West Bank or Gaza. Palestine includes all of Israel. Now, this is not to say that when you hear this that there's no solution. I think to the contrary. I think solution can be easy if every party, if every individual believes that every square inch of this land known as Israel Palestine, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, if both Israelis and Palestinians have strong emotional, religious, and historical ties to this land, then the solution cannot possibly be to separate, because if you separate, then you're doing it because it's convenient, or because you just need a solution in the short run. But sometimes solutions in the short run don't last to the long run if people don't believe in it. If both people want to, have strong attachments to this land, so we need to be looking towards how they can live and share this land in a way that doesn't threaten the other side, where both sides can feel safe and secure. So this is my thesis, and this is what I try to push, is rather than separating into separate countries, is to be a federation or a confederation, whatever you call it, but we stay as a whole, two people in one entity, similar to the United States or Canada, where they have multiple states but within the same country. And what I work on is finding the formula where both sides can get most of what they want, but remaining one union. And
Right.
we'll talk about the details later. That's
Right.
the introduction.
Right. Go ahead, Jeremy. Background, bio, and then you can respond to any of what Kamal said, but also just explain where you got so passionate about this subject.
Sure. I made what Jews call aliyah. I immigrated. I went up from the United States, from Chicago to Israel back in 1995, so I've been here for a long time. And anybody who lives in Israel needs to feel the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as something that they go through on a daily basis. I myself, I've been at sites of terrorist attacks. I also served in the Israeli military, so I've also seen a lot of these things firsthand. And we can go into that, but not in the introduction. I was very interested in a lot of things Kamal said, but I also do want to talk a little bit about what I do today, just as he spoke about being a lawyer. So I am a member of the Bayit Yehudi Party, which is led by Naftali Bennett. I'm a Central Committee member, as well as a party branch member. And additionally, I was selected as the campaign manager for the English-speaking campaign in these past elections, and I was given an honorary spot on the Knesset list for these elections. So when I go ahead and I'm talking about some of the things that I'm going to today, I'd like to also make sure that I explain that I'm talking as myself, Jeremy Sultan, and not necessarily as a spokesman for Naftali Bennett or the Bayit Yehudi, but I'd also be very happy to explain what those positions are on the issues going forward. First of all, it's very nice to be able to be in this type of discussion. I'm always looking for opportunities to be able to hear the other side, and I want to thank Kamal for sitting down and having this discussion. It's always difficult to find people that are willing to be able to sit down on both sides, even if they do disagree on things. But what we're here to do is to talk about solutions. Now, I think that it was a very big step for Kamal to go ahead and to visit Ariel, which a lot of people consider to be the capital of what we call Samaria. It's a very nice town over there. I've been there several times myself, and to really get a feeling of what it is that the people who reside in Ariel feel. And he's on point when he's saying that everyone who lives in Judea and Samaria feels that it's the biblical birthright of the Jewish people to live in those areas. Of course, there's no Jews living in Gaza following the disengagement from 2005, but in Judea and Samaria, you have over 350,000 Jews that are living in those areas, and that's if you're excluding eastern Jerusalem and the Golan, which can get up to over 750,000 Jews. And just like Kamal said, the Palestinians, for the most part, feel that Palestine is all of Israel, that the 67 or 48 border, whatever might be what's considered today the West Bank or Judea and Samaria or anything else, that's just a line on the ideological front, just as many Jews believe, and not just the 750,000 Jews that are living over what's called the Green Line of the 67. But most Jews, I would say, especially if you look at the results of the Israeli elections last month, are not so interested in going towards a peace process of two states for two people. The parties that felt that that was a very important thing for them really have a minority inside the Israeli government. It looks like Netanyahu, who is not really going in that direction, as most people will say, will have a coalition of over 80 of the 120 MKs, meaning that he'll have about 2/3 of the current Knesset, and we're just really not going in that direction. Despite a visit from John Kerry that's coming up, the Obama visit that'll be happening in March, there just doesn't seem to be any way to see that go forward. Of course, the party that I am a member of, the Bayit Yehudi, we are against two states for two people if that means a Palestinian state in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. And it's because of those things it seems very obvious that what we need to do is talk about alternate solutions, and that's what we're here to do today. So I look forward to getting started.
All right, great. Kamal, was there anything that immediately jumped out, knowing or hearing Jeremy's background that you wanted to ask him about? I mean, otherwise, we can go into, I'll go ahead and ask any questions, but it sounds like, both of you could probably, have a dialogue back and forth and get into this on your own, I feel like.
Well, no, I actually, most people would probably think that Palestinians and Israelis, such as Jeremy, are more likely to disagree than agree. But I actually think that the opposite is true. I mean, they may in reality disagree more. They just don't know how to talk to each other. They never really give a chance to each other to understand what they're saying. I do agree with one thing Jeremy said that's important. In the United States, it's always represented that the majority of Israelis want the two-state solution. There are all these polls that say this. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. When I was in Israel, Palestine, and obviously to me, I never referred to it as Israel. I never referred to it as Palestine. I'll always say Israel, Palestine, because I feel the most comfortable with that term. And I feel that's a term that certainly makes it shows my ideology, where I want to go. But in any case, most Israelis who tell you they support the two-state solution, when you start talking about details, and similarly to Palestinians, when you start talking about details, the kind of two states that they want, when you talk about details, no Palestinian would accept it. And similarly, the kind of two states that Palestinians would accept, no Israeli would accept it. The poll that shows that supposedly most Israelis support a two-state solution, I think is misleading. So in that regard, I think Jeremy is absolutely correct. And that's been my experience and through my visit with most Jews. So where I differ than probably most people is that rather than see people like settlers or people like Jeremy as the enemy or people that I can't get along with, I see them are actually more likely to be able to reach an agreement with than, for example, people on the left, which I think have no power in Israel, and they're so unrealistic. They live in a bubble, and even if you reach an agreement with them, it's absolutely a waste of time. I mean, most of the aid from all these NGOs happens to go to the people on the left, but it's a complete waste of money, total waste of money. So here's the kind of agreement I would ultimately like to get into with people like Jeremy and people in the settlers community. I'm willing to accept that Jews feel that they have a strong attachment to the West Bank and Gaza. And I would potentially be willing to fight for them to stay there. So in our solution, we would not be asking for any settlers to move. When, to the contrary, we would actually support expansion of the settlement. But what we would want of people like Jeremy is just like we would see full rights for Jews and all this, is for them to fight for our rights. Today we are absolutely tormented. We are tormented in Israel, Palestine. Not only do we have no rights, we cannot travel, we cannot work. I mean, in Jerusalem, a Jew who is born in Jerusalem, he's an immediate citizen of Israel. A Palestinian, a Christian, or a Muslim who are born in Jerusalem, they're not citizens of Israel. You have to fight for it, and most likely you get denied. If a Jew in Israel or in Jerusalem who wants, let's say, finds a cheaper place in Har Homa, which is in Bethlehem, he can just move there, no problem. A Palestinian in Jerusalem who finds a cheaper house in Beit Jala, which is a quarter of a kilometer, residency permit in Israel. So you have all these rules that torment us. And so what I would say to people like Jeremy, forget the politicians, and if you want to reach an agreement with me, I would be willing to fight for you to stay in Ariel and everywhere else, but you have to fight for me to have equality. And so the question is, and to be able to live throughout this country that I call Israel-Palestine. And so the question is, how can we do it where both feel secure and both feel that they can uniquely express themselves as a Jew or as a Christian, as a Muslim, without feeling fear or without offending someone else. I say there are many examples where this has worked. I mean, I personally support the idea of a federation where we do have two states, but not two countries. Two states like New Jersey and New York. Well, but we're part of the same country where you have free movement of labor and people. Each state will have its own parliament for state issues, but we have one federal parliament. We have one federal government. And that's the general framework. Obviously, I have more details. There's no point in going into it right now. But I think that's what we should be looking at. And I would be expecting people like Jeremy is to ask the Israeli government, look, don't torment these people. We have to live with these people. You can't continue to torment them and expect them to be cool with us, to be accepted. Because I assure you, Jeremy, we are tormented. In the West Bank, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, our lives are miserable. And we depend on people like you to help us so we can help you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, no, I hear a lot of what Kamal is saying. I think he's right as he started out by saying the dialogue that Kamal and I can have can be a lot more productive than the people who are speaking about two states for two people when it comes to the Palestinian state in the West Bank. Because just like Kamal said, they're talking about apples and oranges. They're talking about the same words, but the meaning behind them are totally different. I can tell you that Naftali Bennett, who's the leader of the party that I represent, wanted to do something a little different when he said, my solution is that when he was asked on a Channel 2 interview, will you throw people out of your house? He said, I will not throw a Jew out of his house, and I will not throw an Arab out of out of his house. I don't think we have to throw anyone out of anywhere. Anybody who's living where they happen to be now, they should continue to be living where they are. And I think that that's a very important thing. I think that is the kind of thing that you don't hear from Netanyahu. You do not hear that from other people that are talking, with the two-state solution. I had the honor to go and be a part of a conference in Cyprus in Limassol of the Geneva Initiative. They invited me to go over, and I met Palestinians, and I met Israelis and a bunch of European mediators and people that were trying to help as middlemen. And one of the first things that I said when we were all sitting around the table, I said, listen, I read your plan. It's a very interesting plan. But I have to ask, your plan calls for removing Arabs from their homes in the western part of Abu Tor, removing the Jews from their homes in the eastern part of Abu Tor, sort of making them swap homes, put a big fence in the middle of the neighborhood. And I have to ask, because we have Palestinians that are here, are you willing to support this plan that's calling to throw more Arabs out of their homes? And of course, nobody there was willing to talk about that. And people feel that the Geneva Initiative is one of the easiest ways to get to peace, that merits the most dove party of all of the Israeli parties that are Jewish parties in the Israeli parliament. They're backing this. This is their solution to the conflict. And I think we can agree that that's not something that is really going to bear any fruit. Now, in regards to the stuff that Kamal is saying, we understand that the Palestinians are under a lot of hardship, and we're not very happy about that. That's not something that makes us feel good. Unfortunately, there's a security issue, and we need to do what we can to protect ourselves. And I think that coming to a solution to this conflict in a way that we're able to talk to people like Kamal, as opposed to talking to Hamas or talking to the Fatah leadership that was elected a very long time ago, and many people will argue no longer really represent the will of the Palestinian people, is not the way to go about things. And I definitely think that we can come to some sort of things that can help out. One of the things that the Bayit Yehudi put forth was the idea to annex Area C and give full Israeli citizenship to all of the Palestinians that live in those areas. There's about 50,000 Arabs by our count. The United Nations, I believe, say there's 150,000. But the idea is that the Palestinians that are living in these areas would be able to suddenly move to Haifa if that's what they want to do. They can go back to Akko. They can go ahead and enter areas where something that they've been fighting for instance, with the right of return, they've not been able to do so far, and they would be treated as equals. And I can tell you there are a lot of Palestinians that we've met in Area C that are very much for this plan. And of course, on the Jewish side of things, that takes the 350,000 Jews that are living under martial law in Area C, and it allows them to be full citizens that have the full rights of citizens like me who don't live in Judea and Samaria enjoy, to be able to give them equal representation with taxation. And I think that I'd be very interested to hear what Kamal feels about that plan. I'd love to talk about other plans, but to hear what he thinks about a situation like that, in which this would be, I would look at it as a step to a process. I don't know what we can talk about what will happen afterwards, but this step of going ahead and annexing Area C into Israel proper, considering the fact that the Palestinians a lot of them don't really care whether Tel Aviv is part of Israel or not, because they feel biblical presence to that. But they feel their heritage is in Jaffa rather, and to see that would allow freedom of movement of many people, and that would include areas around Beit Jala, even if we're not talking about Beit Jala itself.
So I'm familiar with the solution, and I think I would certainly be happier if it included Area B and A. The problem with what your suggestion, I mean, it would be great for me if I lived in Area C, but here's how it's going to be perceived, and I think the leadership of your party should seriously think about it, because I think you're on the right road. But you should seriously think about that before you fully push it, because here's how it's going to be perceived on the other side. For years, Israel has not allowed people to build or live or move into Area C. And so all of a sudden, after 20 years of not allowing Palestinians who own their property in Area C to even build in Area C, so they were forced to go to Area A and Area B. And now all of a sudden Israel says, okay, we're going to take Area C, which has almost no people in it, because all the people were not allowed to live there. So basically how it's going to be seen is you're taking the land without the people. Yeah, there are 50,000 people there, but these are not all the people of Area C. The people of Area C are living in Area B and Area A. So I think rather than push that, which I would personally, I think as a general rule, I would like if it included the rest of the West Bank, and we'll keep Gaza aside because they'll have to decide later which road they want to go to. Let's talk about the West Bank for now. Your plan is not much different than what I'm suggesting. The only difference is you're only focusing on a small portion that has very low people, whereas I'm focusing on the general area where it has all the people, so we can finally solve it in general. So let's say you take Area C, which has very low people, so you're still going to have Area B and Area A with people who are tormented, who have no free movement of labor, the economy is destroyed because they cannot sell or buy, there's no free movement of goods, so they're going to be upset. So the security problems that you have had before are going to continue being there. To the contrary, they're going to be even worse because most of the people in A and B are from C, so they're going to be even more furious. They lost their land, but they're not allowed to go with it. So I would suggest that rather than push it, that the leadership of your party expand it and figure out a way how we can include all of the West Bank in a deal like that, where everyone would have equality and all the settlers would stay. And again, there are many ways this can be done. Rafi likes the idea of a confederation. I'm more towards a federation, which means it's one country. Again, with free movement of labor and people, all the settlers stay. We can build more settlers, more settlements. Palestinians can live where they want to, but we can also address the concerns of both sides. I understand when I meet with Israelis who have a few beers, not me, but when they have a few beers and start telling how they really feel. I mean, here's how I understand it. You can tell me if I'm wrong, Jeremy. Israel feels a demographic issue. I mean, they would all love to have the West Bank and Gaza, but they don't want the people who come with it because they want to keep their Jewish majority for various reasons. Most people on earth would like to their particular tribe or their particular ethnic background to be within the majority. So that's normal. But they're also, of course, for historical reasons, Germany and all that, they want that security that comes from having a majority Jewish place with a majority Jewish army and so on. But there are solutions to all that. So if we were to have a federation, we can reach a deal, for example, again, free movement of labor. Each little state has its own state government, like New York and New Jersey does. We have a federal parliament that's 50-50. That will always be 50-50, regardless of demographics. So if one day Palestinians outnumber, Jews will still have 50% of the federal parliament. Israel can take all of its military and make it its state national guard. There are so many ways that we can reach a solution. We don't have to look at a model that exists in Europe or somewhere else. The best models are the ones you create that fit your needs, our needs. But I tell you, as a Palestinian, any solution that will deprive me of the right, and I say this sincerely as a person who really wants an end to this conflict, but any solution that will deprive me of my right to travel or to have a legitimate right to be in 1 square inch of all of Palestine and Israel would make me feel unsatisfied. Now, again, I am willing to accept. After all these years, I finally understood, well, if I feel this way, well, why can't I understand that they feel this way? That they feel the same exact way. So here in the United States, I live in my building, there are Jews, Christians, and everyone. We managed to figure it out. When I walk through East Jerusalem, the old city, I'm always fascinated in the old city, that is, how Jews and Muslims and Christians are walking among each other. They're buying from each other. We're realizing it. It's a small microcosm of what I would like to see. I'd probably like to see it a little bit better than that. I'd like to see Muhammad, Shlomo, and George walking together down the corridor, and on the way, Shlomo and Muhammad will drop George off at the Church of Holy Sepulchre, and we'll see you later. We'll see you at the Shisha Cafe. And as they're walking, Muhammad drops Shlomo off at the Western Wall on his way to the Aqsa Mosque, and then they meet later for knafa or coffee or something. That's my vision. But, but again, I tell you, Jeremy, annexing AAC by itself, you might get people to misunderstand what you're doing. We need a larger solution.
Right. So
you're still leaving the majority in misery.
So, Jeremy, what's your response to that? And just to confirm, Area C, that's the East Jerusalem area, correct? And the
Yeah, I mean, the area of Eastern Jerusalem also falls in Area C.
Right.
So definitely Kamal's, area, but Eastern Jerusalem has its own special status because most people who live in Eastern Jerusalem, there is a pathway to citizenship, but most of them are just what's considered residents. They have Eastern Jerusalem cards. They have more benefits in Eastern Jerusalem than in Area C by far. I think it's obvious, though, that if we're looking at Area C, upgrading their status, the same thing would be happening to Eastern Jerusalem, since Eastern Jerusalem has always enjoyed a better set of circumstances than Area C. So I do also think those people would also be getting an upgrade. But you know what Kamal said is right. People who live in Abu Dis, which some people consider Jerusalem, some people will not consider Jerusalem, there won't be a solution for them there. But if we go back and we look at the Oslo Accords in '92, what happened there is there was an attempt to do things in a slow, gradual process of starting out. That's when they divided things up between A, B, and C. Saying areas A are going to have full autonomy. You're going to be able to have your local governments, and that's going to happen along with the Israeli soldiers leaving those cities. And a lot of times people forget, but the Israeli army has left Area A. They have been going in now and then for security reasons to make arrests and during different mini conflicts that we've had over the years. But the everyday presence of soldiers in Ramallah, in Nablus, in Jenin, that isn't happening anymore. And it sort of gave more freedom inside. But again, Kamal's right when he's saying that there's not the freedom of movement that the people in Jenin would like in order to get to Nablus. They have roadblocks. They have checkpoints. It's not a very easy freedom of movement. And that's why, as a part of this plan, what we would be looking to do is try to take away a lot of those checkpoints and roadblocks. The Bayit Yehudi as a party has never come out saying that we need to increase that. I know that there's positions of people that feel that it's important to do that. I think that we need to remember that the point of the checkpoints and the roadblocks are because of security concerns. It's not being done in order to make the Palestinian people suffer. And I think that there are certain areas that you can withdraw these roadblocks and checkpoints because there's no need for them. There have been areas where there have been no terrorist attacks or no terrorist activity for a significant period of time, and I think that you can do what you can there to make life easier for the people that are living there. I think that I want to come back though to what Kamal was saying. Yeah, I hear what he's saying. He wants to have a one-state solution, but just like he was very honest by explaining that he wants to have freedom of movement everywhere and that that's what all Palestinians want, I don't feel that Israel is ready for a one-state solution. I think that if you're looking at some sort of gradual step where you're able to solve something for the Arabs that live in Area C, if you're able to solve things a little bit easier for the people in Eastern Jerusalem, if you're able to, make some progress going in one direction, you're able to do it in a way where you explain that this is, a test drive, this is a pilot, just like Oslo was a pilot, and we saw that process didn't work so well. So maybe this process will work. I don't think there's any majority or anywhere close to even a sizable minority in order to pursue the one-state solution as a wham-bam, thank you, ma'am, immediate thing. I think if you go ahead and you start small and you do it with things that definitely most Israelis can get behind, where they can see that there is something that they feel that they're getting as a part of this, I think that that's some way to sort of move things forward. I'd love to have an immediate solution to this conflict where we could do this very quickly. But I think the reason this conflict has gone on so long is because we've been looking for immediate solutions. And each side is just very, very strong in the areas where they're not willing to compromise. And Kamal and I discussed this earlier on. And I agree with him on both ends of the issue. There's stuff that he doesn't want to give up on. There's stuff I don't want to give up on. And that's the feeling of the Israelis and the Palestinians. So if we can try to find some sort of middle ground here, where whether it ends up working long term or doesn't end up working long term, at least we're able to help a sizable portion of the Palestinian people. I think that that's something that I would like to see cooperation from the Palestinian side, not just from the people who live in Area C, those 50,000, which of course for them this is a dream, and it'll be very hard to find many people that live in areas like Jaffa and Hussein that are going to speak out against this deal, because again, this gives them the freedom of movement that Kamal is talking about. And, we can talk about what we can try to do for the next step afterwards. What the second step would be after the successful implementation of this as a first step. But I'd also be interested to hear of maybe he has an alternate, instead of having an immediate one-state solution. Maybe he has an idea instead of the annexing Area C. Maybe there's another thing that he thinks that can be done as an interim thing to give it a test run and see where we can move forward from there.
Let me just mention something. You mentioned two words, pilot program and one state, that I want to get back to you. And you also mentioned the Oslo Accords and the fact that they failed. One of the problems that hurt the Oslo Accord are also on your solution, and that is in their desire to reach incremental step, graduation, as you mentioned. The incremental steps happen to the disadvantage of the Palestinian. So, for example, when they said, "Hey, the Israelis will leave Area A, no soldiers there, and let's wait if things get better and we'll improve things, we'll give you more freedom." Just remember, even before there were suicide bombings and so on, well, in this process, while Israel was waiting for to do these gradual steps, from day one, the Palestinians had no movement. So while Israel was thinking about it, the Palestinians were miserable, and it made it extremely difficult for Palestinians, including the Palestinian Authority, to make the sacrifices that are needed, because while Israel was thinking about what it needed to feel secure and safe, the Palestinians had lost their jobs, 50% of their economy shrunk, they were destroyed. So while Israel was thinking, the Palestinian opinion completely changed against Oslo. They thought this is a complete failure. So now you're coming and you're saying, okay, well, let's take Area C, let's do this as a gradual thing, and then we'll see what happens, and perhaps we can expand it in the future. Well, but that means in the meantime, 95% of the people who live in those other areas are going to continue to be miserable, and their opinion is going to continue to change against this, and you may not have the same peace partners that you have today. Similarly, I mean, if I remind you, Jeremy, when the first uprising began in 1986, up until the second uprising, the first one, there were no guns, there were no bombs, there were no anything. By the time we hit the 1990s, from 1980s, the 2000s, so almost 15 years or so.
Right, 2001.
Yeah, the Palestinian population completely changed, because what Israel just failed to understand is when you completely lock these people in, it's not just free movement of people, it's also free movement of goods. There was no business. The Palestinian economy was interconnected with Jerusalem, with everything around it, and when you cut all that off, I mean, the economy shrunk 50%, if you can understand what that means. Most people lost their jobs, and these are the people who were counting on for the peace plan. Well, then they changed their mind, and then that's why they ended up supporting or voting for Hamas, because the Palestinian Authority failed to deliver. And I understand, like, for example, in my last trip when I was over there, I understood that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on numerous occasions, he made presentations to the Israeli government telling them, we're strangled. We are strangled. Here are the steps. Forget the big steps. Forget voters. Forget all this stuff. Let's just talk. You have all these checkpoints that are destroying our ability to do business. You have all these rules that make it difficult for people to work inside Israel. Why don't you help us out this way so at least you improve our economy? Israel has said no to everything. He couldn't deliver, and when he can't deliver, people vote. And then what you end up with? Then you have other people like us that say, "Look, here these guys. They've been trying the peaceful route. They can't even lift one checkpoint. They can't even get your oranges across town where you can sell them. They can't even get you to go build a house in your land in Area C." Where we understand that the only language that Israel understands is war. They took our land with weapons, and we're going to take it too. And so this is the problem with gradual approaches, is that it's usually to the disadvantage of Palestinians. Palestinians have to wait in misery while you decide, hey, well, I feel comfortable. Now, you mentioned, now get to the main point I wanted to get to. I'm not one-state solution right away. I'm not suggesting annexation right away. We can do it in a gradual way, but we have to start with the foundation that we want to be one country, one that from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, that whatever you call this, whatever the rules are, that this territory has to be united. Now, then if we start out with that foundation, then we can talk about the detail. You're telling me that the majority of Israelis do not want a one solution. That's fine, but rather than just give me a general answer like that, well, let's say, well, why don't you want it? Well, we fear that if the Palestinians might outnumber us one day, that we may be in danger, for example. Okay, well, we can find a solution for that. Let's say, well, what if we have 1 million or 2 million Palestinians all of a sudden move into 1948 land, into Jaffa and Aviv and all this stuff? Well, we can find a solution to that. We can say, for example, oh, we're one country. People can live wherever they want to. People can work wherever they want to. But we can say that, for example, for all Jews and all Palestinians throughout the world who move back home, they first must move to their respective states. Jews must first move to Israel. Palestinians must first move to the West Bank. And maybe 5 years later, then they can transfer. Or we can say each state has a right to put a limit on the number of people who move there permanently. I'll pick an arbitrary number. Let's say 50,000 a year. And so we can agree, rather than say we don't want one country, let's look at why. What are the fears that people have? And let's see if we can find the solution.
So Jeremy, would you mind addressing some of those why points? And at the same,
Yes.
and at the same time, maybe discuss, in terms of like this, transition from like an immediate solution to a step-by-step solution. I wasn't not thinking of the word. Sorry, it's early. But basically, can you address?
Sure.
Do you think Kamal has a point where he says like Palestinians are ultimately left in just a waiting position? If it's a gradual approach, and ultimately, if they're not very optimistic right now, what steps would have to be put in place where a gradual solution is going to make Palestinians feel like there is light at the end of the tunnel? I mean, because I think he has a point there, and it does make sense.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, the Palestinians have been waiting for decades. Nobody's going to dispute that. Anyone who does shouldn't really be talking. What I was trying to say in the beginning was that you have to have the easing of the roadblocks and the checkpoints together with the annexation. If you're going to do something for the people in Area C, you have to do something for the people in Area A and B. You can't just go ahead and ignore them. I agree with Kamal on that. That's in terms of what I was talking about with the plan that I was talking about. In terms of what he's talking about, I agree with him. It's not a good idea to just give a blanket no. You should be able to go ahead and look at what the holdups are or the hangups on these type of issues. I think one of the main ones happen to be the right of return. And he was talking about the right of return that I'm sure most people are talking about, which is the right of return from people from the West Bank into Israel. But there's another right of return of the Palestinians that are living in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, in not just in the refugee camps, also in South America, United States. Those are the type of demographics that Israelis are afraid about. I'm sure there are a lot of them that are definitely afraid about the ones in the West Bank, but they're worried about the larger number of the refugees that has really become a global issue. You have Palestinian refugees in pretty much every country. You have Jordan where most of them are, but you definitely have pockets in just about any country. So that's really, if you're going to ask me what the number one situation is that you have to deal with, you have to deal with that particular issue. I feel that if you're able to have a good answer for that one, the other ones, there's a good chance
Jeremy, that
you can come to.
Jeremy, that's basically you're basically referring to right of return at that point, right?
Right, I'm talking about right of return, but I'm trying to focus it, and I'm saying we're not just talking about the right of return when we're talking about areas A and B. We're talking about from a global standpoint.
Right. So do you what is your party's stance on right of return, Jeremy? Because I think that's something that gets brought up all the time, and you have people like Kamal who stated in the beginning have not been allowed to return to Israel. So how do you approach that concept?
Right. So I really feel that is, like I said, the largest obstacle in terms of how the party that I'm a part of looks at that issue. It looks at it just like everybody else, for the most part, in the spectrum of the Israeli government fields. Whether we're talking about Likud, we're talking about Likud Beitenu. I'd say even as far as the Labor Party, Tzipi Livni, who wants to have a diplomatic process, she says that she's more extreme than us on the refugee issue. So when we're talking about the right of return, I really feel that is the main issue. We can talk about demographics, but really the main issue is the right of return. And that's something that, unfortunately, for the Palestinian side, a majority of Israelis are just not behind on that far of an issue.
Right. Kamal, did you want to...
Can I respond
to
that?
Yeah. Go ahead and respond to that.
Listen. Look, first of all, let's just be realistic about this. The likelihood is the overwhelming majority of Palestinians would not return. You're talking about second and third generations who lived somewhere else. Not like easy to come there. I mean, the idea of buying a house, land, whatever. But anyway, let's assume the assumption of Israelis are correct that everyone might want to come back. Let's find a solution for that.
Yes.
But we can find a solution where it doesn't have to be frightening. We can say, for example, certain things, and every Israeli and every Palestinian anywhere in the world will have a right to go live in Israel, Palestine. But to eliminate the anxiety of both sides, we can say, for example, that they must initially go and live in their respective states. And let me tell you why that's significant. So let's say we make an arbitrary rule of saying Jews must first live in Israel for 5 years, or Palestinians must first live in Palestine for 5 years before they decide to move into the other state, for example. Well, first of all, if you come in these 5 years, you get established, you build a house, whatever. Once you get established, it becomes difficult to move into the other side. And once you have the right of free movement of people and labor, you're talking about 5-6 miles. There would be no reason for you to want to go build a house in Haifa and Jaffa, if you can live comfortably in Beit Lahem or anywhere else, well, you can just drive 30 miles or 40 miles and be in Jaffa. It's no big deal. And it's probably much more expensive in Jaffa anyway. People are going to go where it will probably be cheaper. I just think this is an exaggerated concern. And so then let's say, well, after the 5 years, what will happen? What if all these people all of a sudden start to want to move into Israel after 5 years? I'm just trying to think of the, let's say, worst case scenario from a Jewish point of view. Well, the two sides can agree on minimum rules. They can say, okay, the general rule is there's free movement of labor and people, but each state has a right to limit migration for permanent residency. I mean, there would be no limitation for travel, but for permanent residency, they can limit migration. And let me pick an arbitrary number. I know my coffee suggested 50,000 per year. You know, it could be 20, it could be 30. There are many ways we can come at this. You can't just assume the worst case scenario that, hey, what if millions of Palestinians decide to move in? Oh, we can't have that. No. First of all, we know that 90% will not come back. And let's say the 10% who do come back, we can figure out a way where there wouldn't be sudden changes in demographics. There are many ways we can do this, but we have to start with the foundation that we want to be one country, that both people are attached to every square inch. So now that both people are attached, why don't we look at the positives, the opportunities? You're talking about, look at the potential opportunities there. You're talking about a country that's one of the most important countries for the three monotheistic religions. So you're talking about half of humanity finds this, you know, for Jews, okay, we know how important it is. To Christians, it's number one. Even to Muslims, before Mecca was a place, Jerusalem was very significant. And so you're talking about religion. If there was peace, religious tourism alone will make this one of the richest countries out there. You're talking about Saudi Arabia has foreign reserves, cash reserves currently of $720 billion of foreign reserve. Well, rather than invest money in Europe or the United States, you know, these countries can invest in Israel, Palestine. There's so many opportunities that could, if we can finally end this. But I'm telling you, if you want to end this, I need freedom and I need equality, and I can't accept a situation where where I'm treated as less of a person than a Jew.
Right. So what I was going to say is, Jeremy, you can address, you know, that idea of understanding. I thought, Kamal, some solid points there that I had yet to actually hear on Vonvo and think about for a bit. So here's what I'm going to do. There's been a few people typing in the text chat stating that they wanted to, speak on the platform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of the room. I'm going to keep the recording going. One of those guys was Rafi. Another one was named Noam, and Noam is from Israel, and he wanted to jump in. I don't know if both will jump in or just one, but what I wanted to do is thank both of you for your time. You've been awesome, both of you, and I hope to have both of you guys back again. I know, Jeremy, this was your first time, so I hope you would return, and I'll leave now, and these other guys will jump in, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, great.
So, Kamal, I'll just pick up and say that I think that a good way to deal with it is to already solve the refugee issue of other countries if they're able to start working for solutions so that these people have citizenship. In Jordan, they do have citizenship, but there are a lot of places where the Palestinians are just, like you said, they don't have any equality. They're being treated as second-class citizens. And I feel that if we can have a solution so that regardless of what happens with the right of return, they have a citizenship, they have some sort of place that they can fall back on, some sort of other nationality, especially since, like you said, a lot of these people, it's a third generation that is growing up in those host countries. That will go a long way towards solving that issue of the refugees when it comes to the right of return.
Jeremy, how can we ask these countries like Lebanon and Syria and Egypt, to give the Palestinians citizenship when the country that they came from, I'm not talking about the ones who are out, the Palestinians inside that is controlled by Israel today in the West Bank, when Israel won't even give them citizenship. So how can we ask those other countries to give these people citizenship when Israel won't even give them? So the way I see, the Palestinians, the other states, currently is a secondary issue. Let's first figure out a deal with the ones who are living there. Let's work it out for the ones who are living there, because you're not having problems from the Palestinians in Jordan or the ones in Iraq or the ones in Egypt. Your problems are the ones who are living in the West Bank now. So why don't we just reach a solution, and then as part of the deal, then we can come up with a solution for the others. Maybe we can talk. Like I said, the majority of them live in Jordan. Maybe we can give Jordan more aid and allow them to take in more people. But that's like a secondary issue right now. Let's focus on the Palestinians who live in the West Bank. And I'm going to put Gaza aside for a second. But let's work on them. Let's give them a solution.
So again, what I did bring up was...
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I said, I did address a possible thing that could help some of the people. But if we're talking about tackling the main concerns of the Israelis, I do feel that something that will definitely help is if we have an overall solution. It can be part of a broader thing. Listen, that was the reason why Obama decided to involve both King Abdullah and Mubarak in order to find a way that there could be a regional solution for this conflict, because it's not just about the Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria, West Bank, Gaza. It's about dealing with the Palestinians as a nation on a total level. And if we're able to go ahead and we're able to have dialogue with the other countries that are part of the Western aid package that do need to listen when the European and Americans are in the room and they're asking them to help out and pitch into this process, you'll be able to take away a lot of the obstacles and a lot of the negativity that you have on the Israeli side. You can say it's not worth it. Let's put that on the side. Let's talk about other things and go forward. I'm just giving you my personal opinion that I feel it's going to be very, very difficult to be able to approach the area of the right of return when we're talking about refugees on such a large scale, because it's going to be hard for you to explain these things to Israelis. You'd have to put in, a couple of years of an ad campaign to try to change their point of view. But maybe Rafi feels that I'm not representing the usual view, so I'll ask him maybe if he agrees or disagrees with me on this point.
1 second, Rafi, 1 second. Again, you put, what is it, the horse before the cart or the cart before the horse. Again, you want to see your party, or you want to see the reception of the Palestinian people. You have your party leader just say, without giving details, I envision a solution, or I envision an interim step where the people who live in the West Bank will have free movement of labor and people, without talking about a general solution to the problem. Where, I envision a situation where we go back to how it was in the 1980s, where Jews and Palestinians can go trade with each other, and so on. And this is really what I want to get back to. Let him just say these words, and you're going to see he's going to be instantly the most popular person in all of the West Bank and probably everywhere. And you're talking about really making progress. So right now, the people over there, while you're talking about big philosophical issues, they're trying to figure out how to send their kids to school, how to have a job, how to build a house. And I think that should be the focus. And doing things like free. I mean, all right, look at this. So, immediate steps. Right now, it is possible for certain Palestinians to go into Israel to work. It's possible. It's a very difficult process, but it's possible. Well, we can easily expand that. If you look at the border between Ramallah and going into Jerusalem, you have one checkpoint, one person, one person working, or is it two? It's complete chaos there. Hundreds of cars trying to go in. They have soldiers. You look at the crossing between Beit Jala and the one that serves the settlers. I think it's highway. I can't remember what it is. They have like 5 gates. Cars are moving in quickly. I mean, so for example, they can do that for Bethlehem and Ramallah. They can, have more gates to process these people. And they can say, hey, you know what? Anyone can work, but we're gonna have expanded security checkpoint where we let more people in. You can go work. So there's many ways. That's why many Palestinians don't feel that the hindrances and the obstacles are based on security. They feel they're just trying to hurt them economically because they've seen examples where settlers have to go through these checkpoints. They have more gates, more people, more soldiers processing them. They move quickly.
Before Rafi jumps in, I'll just bring up 2 points. The Gush Etzion place we were talking about where there's more lanes, that was something that was done in the last year. And I know on the Palestinian side, by Hawara, they also did a similar thing where they opened up to 2 or 3 lanes. And I do think that Kalandia is one of the checkpoints that's also going to end up going through an upgrade of having more lanes. And I can tell you that I definitely support having more lanes. We have the manpower to be able to do that. And I think you're right. That's a very easy, immediate step that I really see no issue that if that item comes up to a vote in the government that our party would vote for that. Right now, we're still in the process of forming a government, so you can't really go ahead and propose that. But I definitely do agree with you on that point. But I'll let Rafi pitch in.
Sure. Do you guys hear me?
Sure.
Yes? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So my thoughts on the Israel-Palestine conflict, sort of.
Your voice is low, Rafi. Your voice.
How do I get it louder?
Speak into the speaker.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There should be. Now we can hear you a lot louder. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think it needs to go sort of on 2 tracks. One, like commitment to take some temporary steps or to do a step-by-step process that we'll both agree to and implement piece by piece. And sort of like on a long-term vision of that, we really want to make this work and want to live together in a peaceful solution. And also, at the same time, you also need some kind of mutual recognition. I mean, you have Bibi saying we want the Palestinians to accept Israel as the Jewish state, as the homeland of the Jewish people. And you have Abbas getting on the news saying he admits that the 67 borders are Palestine for him, and that was like a difficult step for him to say, and a lot of the Palestinians were against that. When at the same time, what the Jews really want, or at least like someone like me, I would want to be accepted, that not just within the state of Israel, but in fact, like the way I view it as a religious Jew is that my heritage and my tradition and connection to this place includes Bethlehem, and includes Hebron, includes Shechem. All the West Bank is like the heartland of Israel to me, and I feel like on the same way for Palestinians, Israel proper is sort of like the heartland of Palestine to them. And even without saying we're going to give unlimited right of return and everyone, we're going to totally change the situation, just sort of a mutual acceptance that we recognize that you have some history here, and you recognize that we have a connection to this place, and sort of that understanding, that sort of a mutual acknowledgement of that we don't really view each other as foreigners, and then also an acceptance that we each have a desire for self-determination and want to have freedom and representation, and feel that if the Jews feel that if it was an Arab majority state, they would be persecuted or they would be discriminated against. And a lot of the Palestinians support a 2-state solution because they feel if the Jews became a majority, they would discriminate against them. So there's sort of, fear of each other, but at the same time, sort of a step towards acceptance that we recognize we both have a connection here, to this place, and we want to make have two states that'll be cooperative and, amiable towards each other, and sort of envision that recognition that both sides have some sort of rights to be here, and then how to actualize that in reality through that step-by-step process. But I think you need a little bit of both the recognition and a step-by-step. And in terms of a step-by-step process, if you look at the Ehud Omer plan, they agreed to 97% of the West Bank would go back to the Palestinians. Instead of just implementing that, they decided, oh my God, it's the last 3%, and the whole thing fell through. And it's ridiculous. That's like if I said to you, Kamal, or you said to me, you owe me 100 shekels, or you owe me $100. And I said, I don't know about $100. I'll give you 97 now, and maybe we'll talk about the other. And then you said, no, if it's not 100 shekels, the whole thing's off the deal. And I'm like, why? If we can both agree, at least these 97% or whatever, your 95% is definitely the Palestinian state. Why not implement that for starters? And you could there's so much empty space. The settlements themselves are covering 5% of the West Bank, maybe a little strip of they want a buffer zone with Jordan. That would be fine. But the rest of the West Bank, they're right now only holding on to 60% of the West Bank. And most of it's empty space. It's there's these huge zones of military zones that nobody's there. It's just, hills and desert and stuff. And, it's this fight over this. It seems like Israel's controlling 60% of the Palestinian state when it's a big bunch of nothing. You might as well transfer that over and say, okay, this empty areas, you want to build houses, you want to have your, build communities in tents or whatever, you want to feel like you're progressing, take this space and start working with it. And maybe Israel can help them develop it. It's not like it's stuff we're not even using. And to start moving towards, let's expand what's the Palestinian state, at least into the parts where there's no settlers there. I mean, evacuating a settlement, that's a whole, sort of emotional issue. You want to go kick people out of their houses so you can build a state. That's very uncomfortable. But I have no problem with there's an empty hill somewhere, and we could build a Palestinian town or a factory over here. I don't see why I care that they would do that, and if it would make their state start to grow and give them more flexibility and more economic abilities by having more area that they can build industry and build suburbs. I don't really see why not. And even if we can't agree on 100%, let's agree to a step and actually implement it. And the Palestinians should be happy. At least it's better than having 40% of the Palestinian state. Let's push it up to 85 or 90. And this year was better than last year. We started, and we can have freedom of movement through the areas that are now the Palestinians, and have and at the same time they need to drop the whole line of boycotting Israel, because we have one of the best economies in the world, and for them to say, they're trapped in these little microstates right next to us and say they don't want to talk to us. I mean, if they don't talk to us, there's no one else for them to talk to. This isn't the shuk here. You can't go to the next booth. They don't have who else to do business with. If they need to be okay, we're in a process. We've gotten our state established, and Israel could help us out develop it economically, and we're going to start cooperating with Israel so that we can actually put people to work. If you have 50% of people unemployed, it's no wonder the Palestinians are so pissed off. If you don't got a job, you don't have food to put on your table, they're going to be angry, and they're going to be looking for who to blame. If 95% of the Palestinians were gainfully employed, I don't think there would be a conflict that people would talk about. You talk to a Palestinian, how are you doing? I'm fine. I put a mortgage down on my house, I got a new car, my kids are in school, my life is okay. They're not really going to have that much to bitch about. But in the current situation, their economy's stifled, and they're trying to boycott us. It's it's sort of a non sequitur. But Israel needs to come towards them a little bit too and say, listen, we think it's silly for you, and you're hurting yourselves by boycotting us, and we'd like to see you become a functioning economy. We don't want to have 1.8 million people in our backyard that are half unemployed and angry. That's not in our best interest. It's not good for our image. So let's start working to make your lives better.
Just to add something that Rafi just said right now, and Israel really needs to stop using starvation as a method when they get upset with the Palestinians. When Abbas went to the UN and asked for a state, I understand Israel was unhappy with that. So how did they respond? By not giving them the tax dollars. So they laid off, all the Palestinian employees of the government have not been paid in 2 months now. There are demonstrations, there are strikes, schools have closed down. So, I mean, so Israel's been doing this thing now for 40 years. When they get upset, they collectively punish everyone. And so now they kind of, so they're upset with Abbas, so they decide to starve them into submission. I mean, I just don't see how Israel thinks this can win them friends.
I don't think that the point was to starve the Palestinians. I think that's an unfair assessment of what the response was. I think the primary part of the response of Netanyahu and his government was that they decided to build an E1 to send a message over to the Palestinians that if you want to do one-sided moves, we can do one-sided moves. When it comes to the money that is sent to the Palestinians, I do think that the health of the Palestinian economy is something that should concern Israel. I agree with Rafi on this point. We talked, Kamal, you and I, about one of the ways to do that, which is to be able to expand the checkpoints and roadblocks that do exist in order to have more people get in faster. There are a lot of people that just simply cannot work in Israel because they can't wait 2 hours each way getting in and out. So I think that there's a lot of things we can talk about on the immediate side of things, because that's something that we can definitely talk about as we have a new government that's going to be formed in March or April. Rafi was trying to bring us a lot back towards the macro level of things. That's where Kamal was also sort of responding to things Rafi was saying. I think if we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about Abbas's decision to go unilaterally and head over to the UN and do things the way that he sees fit, especially long after his term had legally expired, I don't think that was in his best interest. And I wouldn't be surprised, I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the things that the Netanyahu government did at the time were done to try to either convince Abbas to go to new elections or to do what he could to sort of make his standing a lot more difficult within the Palestinian Authority. But again, that's speculation.
Well, hopefully, I guess we can leave it this way. I mean, hopefully, we can repeat what we did last December, Rafi. I mean, I'm certainly glad that I met Jeremy today, and I certainly hope this could be the beginning of something good. And maybe in the future when we get back, and I'm having a child in about 3-4 days. I don't know when. So,
wow,
congratulations.
Yeah, that's going to be our first child. So, that's why I couldn't visit this year. So hopefully if we can make it there next December, maybe we can carry on with this by doing a conference like we did last December, with having maybe,
sure.
Could be joint sponsored by us and Jeremy's group, or maybe his party. Maybe we can do something like this at even the Knesset and invite people from, I don't know how they even know if they have meetings over there or not, but maybe, do a high-profile meeting to discuss all these issues between Israelis and people from the West Bank, and just because these kind of conversations are useless unless people hear them. And we want people to hear us being able to have a conversation like this. Even if we don't agree, it doesn't matter. But I think there's enough here that if we were to try it, if we were to try doing some of these things, such as relaxing the borders, giving more people work permits in the meantime, that will just create such a better atmosphere that it gets more people to agree. So maybe I would suggest this, that for our next conference, maybe we can do it together.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
I want to say I also really enjoyed meeting you, Kamal. I think this was a productive discussion. I think it's very important to have these type of discussions. I look forward to having them when you're next in the area to be able to do it in person. And I would definitely favor having something on a higher profile level and something that would be a little bit more structured, perhaps, so we would be able to to look at the issues and see exactly what it is that we can accomplish. I mean, my philosophy is the point of a meeting is to know who is doing what by when. And to be able to have that type of discussion in person, I think can definitely bring a lot of good to both sides. And I look forward to having an opportunity to do that in the future.
So let's connect on, let's have each other's contact information, maybe on Facebook or something. And, I'll give you mine. I can email you my, all my contact information. And I hope to have yours. So when I visit next time, I'll give you the heads up that I'm coming. I'd like us to meet and plan something. And maybe we can carry this conversation much further. But I see a new person just came in. It would be uncool for us to leave as he shows up. He'll read it.
Well, yeah, we should.
How are you doing, guys?
We're doing okay.
Good.
Nice to meet you. Jeremy, Kamal.
Do you want to say something?
I didn't hear the whole discussion, but what I did hear, it was amazing discussion. Very, very truthful and very promotion for. I'm sorry, 1 second. Can you hear me good now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say
some
this
stuff.
was.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say it was a great discussion. That's it.
Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Very, very different from the usual discussions that I hear here, and that's it.
All right, thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. Maybe, Rafi, you can also talk to Max. I agree with Jeremy's position that, we should have more structured discussions rather than, these discussions are good where you can talk about whatever comes to your mind, but, if we can have more structured ones, it's also better. And maybe one day we can get Doron to meet him also and Yehuda to meet him. And, we can just have more structured discussion. Maybe we can even have one day mock peace negotiations. Maybe that could be one of our goals when we visit next time.
Yeah, that sounds fine. We could we could think of what topics to discuss. I really think that one of the things should be separated is what to do about the West Bank and then what to do about Jerusalem, and in that order. There's no two countries in the world that share a capital city on Earth today. The only places
there are people in Gaza too, but
Jeremy, what's your last name?
Yeah, Gaza also.
Salted.
Let's see, type it down. SULTAM?
No. Here, there you go.
Let me find
you. See that?
Let me look down. No, where did you type it?
I typed it at the bottom here. There's a little box.
No, I didn't get anything. But let's see, I'll just type it. I'm going to look you up on Facebook. Spell it.
SALTAN.